In Nigeria or in countries, some countries in Africa, when you're struggling to be fed from day to day, or we're facing poverty on an unfathomable scale, the type of prayer you need is not the same type of prayer you give to an Australian.
You come, half an hour before service, you get 50% off the coffee. So when we came at exact time at 9:30. The car park was full, the church was full.
Exactly.
I was like, but we don't, if you go to an African church,
with the church itself, was it situated to be a church for all, or a church for this set or this nationality?
The way I dance in migrant church is different from the way I in my current church. If they are jumping up, you can't be doing all of this. They'll just be looking at you. No. Yeah. Hi everyone, welcome to the podcast. This has been a long time coming. I guess, people are watching us for the first time, and they are, there's a lot of podcasts out there, and they are wondering, what is ours about? What is, beyond the veil? What's the inspiration behind it? What are we going to be, talking about? I will start with Olaide. What are you getting when you hear beyond the veil? Why are we going for this podcast at a time like this?
Thanks, Afolabi. Look, I think for me, what I'm really hoping for us to get out of this podcast is a forum for us to, be able to discuss, the hidden topics within the church, because I'm a big believer that, or I tend to believe that important matters, the most important matters are the ones that are never usually talked about, because, they can cause a bit of friction. They can cause a bit of angst between members of the church, So I think that this forum will allow us to talk, be more open, talk about things that, some of our members are not, capable of saying themselves. So I'm hoping we can be the voices for them.
What about you, AY? What are you thinking when it comes to this podcast?
No, thank you. I think we've come together to have a platform where we can talk about those things you definitely don't want to talk about within the church settings, but it affects the church, it affects us as individuals and then as Christians. So it's a platform where we can talk about all those things that bothers us, but we cannot say within the normal occasional church settings. But it's here.
Yeah,
I'm glad we'll set it up and we're doing it. So I'm up for it.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I think, this idea, we are very flexible, isn't it? And we, we have, a frame of things we want to talk about, but there's a lot of things, that I feel like we're going away from, or it's too difficult to talk about. Even growing up, you stay away from some topics. So we are not afraid in this podcast, right?
No.
We want to dive in.
Want to go the other way.
And I guess the audience are also going to be able to comment and give us what they want us to also talk about, which I think is going to be exciting. We are all Christians. We are all Nigerians. We've been in Australia for a couple of years. Yeah. So we've attended. We attend African churches. We've also seen what Caucasian church looks like, Western churches. So we just want to, enjoy and flow with the podcast, isn't it?
Yeah, things we've noticed all around, things that bother us personally, things that we think we should be able to discuss, things that husband and wife discuss on their bed but are not able to tell their friends. Just a platform where everything could be laid out there. We should be able to say, that topic, we can discuss it. We can talk about it, because we believe that once something is discussed, then the problem or the solution is half there. And I hope people are able to connect and find it as a place where, yes, at last somebody is willing, or a set of guys are willing to talk about these things.
Yeah, and I guess we are not here to tell people what to do.
Exactly.
And what we are here for, obviously we're going to be sharing our views. We're going to try as much as possible to be genuine. What do you have to say about that? Instead, we're going to share our views, but we don't want to be pushy and make people feel, like they have to believe in the same set of views. I'm sure there will even be clashes in all three of us in views.
No, honestly, and look, I even say that if we're not causing discontent between each other because of our opposing views, then we're not doing this right. The point of this is for us to be able to give different perspectives, because that is actually one of the issues within the church, is that there are people with different perspectives, but we feel like if we're not along like a mainline view, then we're wrong. So hopefully within these kind of conversations that we have, we can talk about things, have different perspectives, and then, we'll let you as the audience be able to make your own decision. We just want to give you a different perspective of the same thing so that you yourselves can come to a better conclusion, So
Great. Awesome. So we'll start with episode 1.
yes.
Yeah, what is in there? What's in there?
Okay. All right. So episode 1, we're going to be talking about why do migrant churches struggle to reach Western audience. With all, I've experience, we attend migrant church, and, we're going to be even talking today that is it a problem, and the gospel is meant for everyone, yet many migrant churches face challenges, when it comes to connecting with Western audiences. Is it a cultural barrier? Is it lack of understanding? Or is it something, different? So in today's episode, we're going to be exploring the struggle that exists and discuss how these churches, can actually bridge the gap, to fulfill the Great Commission. So, why do migrant churches fail to reach Western audience? Is it even a problem to start off with? Is this a problem?
You've already taken my answer. Look, actually, I used to be somebody who thought that, I pushed very hard for the idea that we should be a very inclusive church, loving church, so that, regardless of what culture you come from and this and that, if we have to bend over backwards to accept you into the church, that's what we should do. But, I find myself actually changing my mind. And the reason for that is that, coming to church, the main thing is to receive the gospel. But there are different ways of receiving the gospel, and culture plays a big fact. See, culture is not bad, but it's not number one. It doesn't come above like the culture of Christ. But at the same time, people receive information and take information differently, I'll give you an example. There was one pastor that came to my church, He told me that when he got there, he dressed in a suit. He dressed in nice shoes, everything that you'd expect of a pastor. But the country he went to, they don't wear suits and all this kind of stuff. They wear slippers, they're very free-flowing, It's very, very easy. So I guess what I'm saying is that sometimes we get to a culture that we are in. So like, for example, I'll give you why in Australia, for those of you that don't know, Australia can have a very different culture to our culture.
Yeah.
And so sometimes for us to give up our culture and adapt to theirs so that they can embrace, how we do things, sometimes it's not easy. In fact, you may find out, although I won't discredit, you may find out that some of the members within your church, they actually like your church because of the inner culture within it. So by getting rid of the culture itself, even though you're now opening yourself up to more people or more non-traditional members of your church to come in, the problem is you might actually end up losing some members, even though those members should not move from your church just because of non-Christian things. But I have more to say about that.
Yeah.
So I'll pass it on.
So AY, is it actually a bad thing if there's a Chinese community in Australia and they have a church, that is predominantly for, people from China, and, they speak, their language? Is there something wrong with that? Like having a Chinese Christian church in it could also be Nigeria, it could be any. Is that a problem?
So the first thing we want to look at is why was that church instituted in that environment or in that area? Is this to attract that particular demographic of people, that particular set of people, so that they have a place to commune together and serve God together? Or is the church a church open to all? For example, we see the African churches and the different denominations attracting different people from different walks of life and nationalities. And like our topic is, why are we struggling to attract others? So first of all, the thing that comes to my mind is the church itself, was it situated to be a church for all or a church for this set of these nationalities to have a place to commune with God? When we take that first, so sometimes when I enter a church, I look at the church, well, okay, is it a church for all or a church for West Africans to come together? If it's a church for all, then it's a problem because the churches, the way we see the church presently, we are not seeing all in the church. We're seeing a set of people in the church.
And it's a matter of when you now invite maybe your friend or someone to the church, they feel like, okay, is this a cultural gathering or is this a
church?
Christian gathering?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And then you go to, okay, for example, I'll make some examples. So you go to a church like what's that big church where they do Hillsong. Yeah. Every type of nationality is there. Right? And then you go to some other churches from Africa, for example, or churches from China, and then you find the second set of demographics. So first thing I ask myself is the church for all or for a set of people in this community to come and worship here? Now, if the church is making the bold claim of this church is for all, we are trying to open it for all, then we'll go a step further and say, okay, about the culture within the church then? How does the church do their things? Is the culture a culture that is open to all or a culture that is promoting a certain culture from Africa? Now, that's where it gets interesting.
So so we have two issues here. We are here in Australia. It's either you start a church, and Australia is a migrant country, okay? So a Nigerian person or China or Mexican can start a church and can decide that, this church, I want to serve, just the people from, Mexico, or China. And, yes, there's nothing wrong with this, but if someone that is not from the same culture as your church wants to be part of that church, they should not be excluded, because before our culture, we have the Christ culture. So we are family either way. So, for example, if I want to join a Mandarin church, a China church, they should welcome me in, even though they are trying to serve just the Chinese within that community. And they should try as much as possible to make me feel welcome in that church. So if they have been speaking their Mandarin language in service and all of that, they need to try to cater for me, either, look for a way to teach me Mandarin, which will probably take years, or they can just, translate to me. So I think we can have that idea that, there are some very effective migrant churches that focus on one culture, but I think, other Christians should not feel secluded, and they should also try to, have links, with other community churches.
So I think, and not to take words out of your mouth, but where lies the problem? That's where the problem is. Is that for me, that's the beginning. No, that is the beginning of the problem. The thing is, the churches you go to, or from the African community, are making probably making the bold claim of the church is for all. It's not for a certain people from a certain nationality. If you are saying that, then I'll use your example. You say you go to a church from China, and then you have to go there. They're speaking Mandarin, and they're not speaking English. That means you have to learn Mandarin. Yes, they welcome you in. It is your father's house. You can walk in. But then you go in, and the culture already provides for some obstacles that you have to cross before you can get the message, before you can do the music. I mean, that's not welcoming for you. You feel like, I'm out of place here. I shouldn't be here. And that's where the problem lies. And that's part of my reason for why the African churches are not yet attracting or are not able to attract other nationalities.
See, look, in fact, I might change my mind. You ask me the same question 6 months from now, I might change my mind. But my current view at the moment is that I don't think that our African churches, or even any migrants or social or specific demographic of churches, they should change. I think they actually should stay the same, contrary to most people's belief. And this is why I believe though. We have to separate the idea of being inclusive and having like cultural ways of running a service. Let me give you an example. If you go to China today and you go to a church and they speak Mandarin, you can't expect them to bend over backwards to start speaking English so that you feel included. See, they might let you come into the church and say that, that's if you can even speak Mandarin. They'll let you come in, they'll feed you, they will love you, but you can't expect them to bend over backwards to start speak English.
But we are talking about China churches or even Nigerian churches in Australia. It's different. It's different because I get your point that like you don't expect them to change.
Inclusivity.
But again, in Nigeria, a white person cannot go to Nigeria now and expect them to be, to start wearing suits or all the time to church. We will still wear our traditional wear. But a Nigerian church in a migrant church in Australia, and we know, the demographic, like the percentage of people here in Australia is 80-90% Western Caucasian. So and the gospel is like the Great Commission, go out, share the gospel. So we can't,
No, I'm not even denying the fact that people should. I use that as an example just to show that, like, if you generalize this principle, it doesn't work everywhere. But even in Australia, you have some demographic-based churches. Like, they even have churches that have the country in front of the name of the church. Like they'll say a Burmese church or a Chinese church or an Afghanistan church. But the point I'm making is that. Let me give you another example. If you come into a church, you find out, like, let's use, like, the big mega churches. So one difference is that people go to those churches and they'll pray for 5 minutes. They might even pray for 2 minutes. You go to, like, most African churches. I've not been to any Chinese church, but you go to an African church. They can be praying for an hour. If the Holy Spirit has led them, it's an hour. So what I'm saying is that there are some people, there are different ways you can receive the message. There are some people, you go to a church and you can receive prayer in 5 minutes and you still be blessed. You go and pray over there, you pray for 1 hour and you'll be blessed. So I think it depends on people's appetite. So when they come to those churches that are actually migrant-based churches, I think it's not just the church bending over backwards or the church will always welcome everybody in, but it's also those people coming in. They have to ask themselves, what kind of, like, how would they like to receive God? There will be some people who want to go to a church where they will talk about the science and this and that. There's some people who want to talk about the real aspect of how they receive God spiritually. So I think people have to ask themselves, where do I want to receive the message? And choose that church, and that's where you receive it. Some people, I will just stop there because I know.
So there are African churches that want to reach the Caucasian audience. There's no doubt about that.
Yes.
To fulfill the Great Commission. Okay. So and majority of Australia is becoming more and more secular.
Yes.
Okay. So a lot of people they might be hearing Jesus or just be new to the faith and all of that. So and our mission is to reach these people, right? And so how do we go about that? And to add to that, I'll pass it on to you, AY. Like, are there people in our churches that kind of still like the way things are? So they are resistant to change. Is this part of the problem? Like, are there people that don't want us to change too much? Because for me, I feel like, I understand where Lydia is coming, but I feel like it's the church that has to do more to make it more appealing.
The church has to still do more, I believe, but it's not all the church. That's what I was saying.
So what?
So I understand what Lydia's theory and thesis is there. It's not all the church. And hence, you remember how I started in terms of what is the church meant? What is that church focusing on? Now, coming back to our own area, which is
to answer your question, what are migrant churches in Australia?
Some migrants, some from Lydia's thesis, and to borrow from what we have all discussed, some migrant churches are there for that particular set of migrants to have a place to worship. Some migrant churches are here to evangelize to all. Now, we from the African churches, and we tend to make the bold statement of saying we are here for all. So we're a universal church. So if that is the case, then our question, which is why are we struggling to reach others that are not from our own cultural background? Why are we struggling? Is it a problem? Yes, it's a problem. For me, I believe, yes, we are struggling to do that. Why are we struggling to do that? Now, to come back to your question, which is, do I see? I will tell you, there are some people in the church that sees the Sunday service as a way of their cultural gathering. That, now it's Sunday. I can get to wear that ashwebi. I can get to wear that clothes from, or we can celebrate so thing in the church. They see it as a social gathering. Yes, they see it as a spiritual gathering. And then there's a social construct to it that they also enjoy. So when you want to now decongest that social aspect, they put up a front.
And you know what ends up happening is, even in our, these migrant churches, what ends up happening is we actually do, the parents stays, they continue, but the younger ones, as they start to get older, they start to fit more into the Australian way of life.
Yeah.
So we end up losing a lot of youth.
Exactly. We're losing youth because they can't connect.
So is it sustainable? Is it sustainable, that kind of approach?
No, I don't think it's sustainable. And I've witnessed this in a few of the churches that I've gone to that are migrants, is that in fact, I think it's one of the biggest crises they're facing at the moment. The fact that you're getting to a point where the older and maybe say medium tier generations that are getting older and are starting to peel off. In fact, the people that will replenish the church are those from outside the country that are coming here of that age, that are used to the culture that they're coming from. But those that are even currently in the church, that are young, that are coming up, you have to ask yourself, do they actually feel like they're receiving something? Or is the format in which they're receiving something like, all right, well, I want to just digress us for a bit.
Okay.
I won't go off.
I have something against your theory.
Okay,
but
keep it in mind. Keep it in mind. See, there's also another part of this. There is a human nature part of this. If you take me to we keep using Chinese church, but it's the first one that comes to mind. You take me to a Chinese church,
because Chinese church is actually booming. Like they're
one of the fastest growing in the world. Absolutely. And also the Church of Iran. But anyway,
I didn't know that one.
No, that one, it's very quiet, but they're booming. So if you were to take me to, actually, don't let me use me as an example, because I'm a very open person. I don't mind going to any church as long as I can understand. But if you bring people, and I've brought people to even my church, and they see that, it's a church full of black people. See, they're not opposed to black people, but it's a bit intimidating. You have to look at the human factor. Humans are attracted to what they know. They don't like to change. They assimilate into environments that they know and are comfortable in. And when you bring somebody to a church where it's like full of black people, or it's full of people that are not of their culture, some of us, they may even say Africans are too loud. That is partially true. Or, man, we dance too much. I don't know how to dance. I don't even know how to dance. So it's actually people themselves too, we can try as much as we want. But if somebody says that, not that they don't like that church, but there's a lot of black people, I'm a bit intimidated. They won't tell you they're intimidated, but they may feel intimidated, like they can't assimilate because it's just, they will not come. And as a church, there's nothing you can do, because I know when we bring new people to our church, we hug them. We shower them with more love than we even shower our members.
Not all the time, not all the time.
Not all the time, but my experience has been like that. So.
Let me butt in. Two things. First thing is your theory about how the church replenish itself, and there's like the dependency on the older generation to bring their children, and then the children will replenish the church. I mean, that's faulty for me. If a church is using that as a strategy of being able to keep that ongoing as members, then it's faulty. What I think churches should be more focused on is the more evangelism you get, your message gets out there, people get converted, then they join your church. They see it as a community where they can grow. Like they can grow spiritually, and then also have a community of support. That's how I think a church should function in terms of replenishing its members as time goes on. That's the first thing. The second part, which is no, I think I will stop there for now. So that we don't take this
when we look at the Bible, we see Jesus. He was a Jewish man. But he crossed cultural barriers. You can see him speaking to the Samaritan woman at the well. In their time, it's a Jewish person, a Jewish man, would not be seen talking to someone like that. But he did it, right? We look at, even with Paul, we look at, Cornelius. So you know, Jesus has come in, and yes, even though he went to minister to the Jews first, even at the initial start of Christianity, you know, we have that, you know, cultural issues, but he still, you know, penetrates there. And Paul, you know, obviously we know the story of Paul. He did an amazing job in penetrating, you know, society.
Different cultures.
We know Enoch with the Ethiopian. So for me, I'm still of the belief that if we have a church in Australia, it should reflect the people of Australia.
Exactly.
So if we have a church in India, if we have a church in US, it should reflect that demographic. So what does the gospel look like when we strip it of all cultural influence? What does the gospel, because the gospel by itself, it should be attractive, right?
Yes.
The gospel by itself should be enough. So what does the gospel look like when we take away those cultural influences? You know, AY.
I would say that is even part of the problem in terms of why we are not able to attract the people, the Caucasians and everything. I mean, the type of culture we coming from Nigeria, the type of gospel that was preached to us.
Yeah.
I mean, I my first 1 year in Australia changed a lot of things for me in terms of I got to understand like, oh no, wait, that first, like generally you hear a lot of people say, oh, the things Nigerians pray for, or the things Africans pray for, when you get to the Western world, people don't pray about those things because the government provides those things. Like that was also a cultural shock. But inherently, the mindset of people
It's different.
is different. The mindset of people is different. The ability to know that you can do more with your life. You can, and then you can stay in a particular position and do more in where you are in your own local area. So that aspect. Now, the gospel that's being preached to us, it's mainly I know God as when I was in Nigeria personally. I will tell you, I know God. I think I was serving Jehovah Jireh. That's the only one. That's the only part of God I know.
And that was an effective evangelism too.
Yes, you know? Because of that environment. But then I come here, I have to understand that no. It's not only Jireh.
Yeah.
Oh, this God is Nisi. He's Tsikenu. There's a lot to this God than just Jireh. And that, you know, not many people. If you have not found out that for yourself, it's hard to evangelize.
So thank you for actually pointing out the gospel. You know, a different kind of gospel.
Exactly.
So, what is the gospel that, you know, that should be able to penetrate all culture? Because what AY was saying, that we have an issue because the gospel that was, you know, that we heard, you know, in Nigeria, when we bring it here, it becomes dicey, it becomes tricky, you know. So what is the gospel, you know, of Christ? Because we shouldn't have that problem, right? If the gospel of Christ is universal and should still be able to penetrate, you know, whatever cultural, you know, if the 100% of the people in the country is wealthy or well-to-do, or if, you know, it's a very, you know, poor and, you know, country. Yeah.
Look, I think this is why I'm saying that it's very tricky with culture. The intersection between culture and Christianity is very tricky because, like you said, you always have, see, one thing that was great about Paul is that he adapted to his culture, or he adapted to the circumstances he was facing. Yeah. And I think that it's very, very difficult to deal with this.
Wait, now, did Paul adapt to culture?
No. Paul said, no, to the Jew, I'm like Jew. To the Gentiles, I'm like Gentiles.
His approach to them was different. He didn't approach a Gentile the same way he would approach a Jew. Jews are more, how would you put it? They're more, you know, they're very hard. They follow hard to the law. Yeah. Gentiles, they don't know about the law. So you can't take a law-based approach to Gentiles. You have to, see, the gospel message can never be compromised, but the approach to which you give the message can change.
Okay.
You know? Because think about it. In Nigeria or in countries, some countries in Africa, when you're struggling to be fed from day to day, or we're facing poverty on an unfathomable scale, the type of prayer you need is not the same type of prayer you give to an Australian. You don't talk about whether you need to eat or not and pray about that. You now have to change your approach. You now have to talk about your sin, the type of lifestyle you live. Because the trick here is that you can get caught up in the idea that because everything is, like you said, government will handle things, there is job, there is this. You can get to the point where you're so successful that, it's easy to lose God. But in Nigeria, it's different. You're not even worried that you may receive this and that to receive God. The point is that you might even become so poor, you might even believe that there is no God. So I'm just saying that.
But the message should not change.
The message doesn't change.
But
the approach to how we tell them,
because
but
we
in
have
our
we have the
churches,
same Bible.
but in our churches,
Yes.
in our migrant churches, we're trying. What I'm like, my point is, our message is not attracting them. I mean, look at
do we
at
have
us.
the gospel of Christ then? If it's not attracting
we
them?
have the gospel of Christ, but I would say we generally, from what I've been hearing,
Or do we lean more?
We are leaning more.
Okay.
We are leaning more, and that's part of the reason we are also losing the youth in the church.
Yeah.
Because you come and talk about Jehovah Jireh every time. The boy is looking at, what's he talking about? There's chicken at home. He doesn't get it. He doesn't get it. Like what is? He can't connect.
So in our society, yes.
So then also as Africans, you come in, you believe in you, everything.
Yeah.
It's hard for you to also evangelize because you're like, oh, the type of, like I told you, I couldn't say anything about Christ to anybody because I had to learn. Oh, it's a cultural shock. Then I had to relearn. Like, okay, and then you also growing personally.
You need to learn the culture. Isn't it? And I think maybe before we come here and start a church, let us spend good amount of time in Australian community. There's a lot of African pastors that do not even know the culture of Australia because we go to work, we come back, and then we go back to our own community. So I think that's one of the biggest problems we have because we don't understand them. So for example, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. That message works in Africa because if God loves you, he cares about you. You might have empty stomach now, but he cares about you. There's a dinner, ahead of. But in Australia too, God loves you. He gives his only begotten son. So if you are struggling with depression, if you are struggling with anxiety, you have someone who is the most important being in the whole world that cares about you, that loves you. So you see that message is still the same, but how we sell it, how we say it is different.
Absolutely.
But so I think for me, here in Australia, for a long time, I was going to, an African church, a migrant church, and one of the first Sunday that I actually say, let me explore, let me see what's there, in other churches. And I learned so much in that day. It was in Sunshine Coast. I can't remember the name of the church I went to. And the way they do things, the way you get coffee. In fact, they say that if you come, half an hour before service, you get 50% off the coffee. So when we came at exact time at 9:30. The car park was full. The church was full.
Exactly.
I was like, but we don't. If you go to an African church,
where you
half
can't
an hour,
see
1 hour, you are still strolling in.
Apart from, so that's a good point.
Yeah,
they like coffee. African churches where you go
we
to,
have
do we have coffee?
I don't even drink coffee.
You go to all these churches that are penetrating the congregations. You will see that they have
those
actually
little things. They actually they count.
They count.
And that's why I say that we need to have our people, our pastors, actually spend time there to know what's working there.
See, this is why I think I'm still against that kind of view. Not fully against it, but a moderation in between. Because look, like I said, you have you ever tried to be everything to everybody and it doesn't work? This is that kind of issue. See, I'm not saying that we shouldn't learn and observe the culture because we still have young people that are growing and are born into this culture, and we also have to incorporate some of that learning. But the fact is that if you try and be everything to everybody, nobody will go there.
But we should try and be more of the culture we are in.
Yes, no, you're right. It's not that we come from one country and bring everything from that country and we don't change. No, we have to even adapt because, like we even said that as you come to this country and you face new challenges, you face new rewards. The message that you're receptive will slightly change. But what I'm saying,
are we adapting?
Eh?
Are we adapting?
No, okay, but that's the problem. Why? See, but it's like I said, it's a two-pronged problem. Is the church adapting? Not fast enough. Are people still willing to, even if we adapt, are people still willing to come to the church? I don't know. Because like I said,
I think so.
I don't know. Because if you bring a white person, say if you bring an Australian to this church, to one of our African churches, we dance for like 15 minutes. Our songs are loud. I know some.
Do we need to change that? Why can't we change that?
No, but see, that's the thing. There are also other Australian churches that do that. Not Nigerian or African churches. There are other Australians that actually like to dance more. In fact, it's even a denominational thing.
Okay,
that's the issue.
Okay, no. There's no issue about dancing.
Yes.
How about the type of song when you sing your cultural song and you sing in your own language?
No, but see,
The way I dance in migrant church is different from the way in my current church. They are jumping up. You can't be doing all of this. They'll just be looking at you.
No, but that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that like we can't change
that.
everything.
Yeah, we can't
I think
change
there's
everything.
some things that we adapt to and we say let's move it.
Yeah.
But we have to understand that. Look, this is why I'm never afraid to say that if I find somebody who wants to become a Christian and they say that I need to come to church, I'm not 100% pushing hard that they have to come to my church. I will say that look, if my church is not like if it's not resonating with you very well, there are other churches that I know that are good. The only problem with that is maybe I can't follow up and check how he's doing, although I'll still try and call him. But I may say that, look, maybe this person is quiet. Because, see, let me give you an example. There was somebody who came to our church and they were like, oh, the music is too loud. They had to go to the back. Their ears were ringing. They went to
The music was...
Yes.
And I think that's one of the problems we have, because we can be in a migrant church that is this small, and we have like 3-4 speakers, one there. And you're like, why? You don't need any speaker. You can talk. And everybody will hear you.
Exactly.
But see, that's the thing. Sorry, sorry to cut you off. But there are also, see, that's why I don't say that we have to cut off our culture to have Christianity.
Yeah.
Christianity merges with our culture. We make sure Christianity is on top, but we add our culture to it. So there are people who, when they want to fall into spirits, who want to touch in God, it's like they have to drop on their knees. They have to listen to God in a certain way. They still get the same message.
So, okay, I'll tell you something. Fundamentally, there are some people who are not Christians, and I want to digress a little bit.
Yes.
There are people who are not Christians, and their reasons for not being Christian is because they date back historically and they say, the way Christianity is presently practiced and the things Christians observe presently are not biblical. For example, the Christmas. The Christmas, they will tell you that's not the day Jesus was born. And you're celebrating it, and that thing dates to a sun god. Right. Now, that is Christianity meeting culture.
That's another topic on its own.
I'm just saying, Christianity meeting culture.
Yeah.
Now, somebody, I think it was, I've forgotten the name of that emperor that said he saw Jesus and he tried to change everything in Rome to conform. And now we have what we have now that everybody is following. But then there are some fundamentalists that tells you why. Why have you mixed those two together such that it makes your Christianity is now making references to idols, although you have changed what it means, and they will tell you there are some practices in the church that are the way they used to worship pagan gods, and now we have brought it to the church, and now we are now worshiping Jesus. I get. I'm just telling you that there are some people that. In this Caucasian world that we are in, that knows about that aspect of the gospel, and it's a wall for them to cross.
Yes.
Now, that's one aspect.
Yes.
Right. Another thing is once Afolabi just said the music, and there's a lot of things I think if we want to attract these people, we want to keep our youth within the church. There are a lot of things to do. Another thing is our set of programs. Our set of programs, is it speaking to the need of people here? I mean, there's a lot that is going on within the church that the church needs to. For example, I will tell you orderliness in the church for some times.
Okay.
I mean, children are running around. You go to some churches, everything is orderly. I'll tell you one thing. When I was in Nigeria, one of the things I loved about Deeper Life was that orderliness. Oh, I just love it. You enter the church, they take your children, everybody is there, the usher tells you what to see, everybody is quiet. You are the church is so orderly, you want to go and take a leak. You are shy of standing up. like
You make too much noise.
I'll be saying, please, I want to pass.
Yeah,
You are
yeah.
shy.
Okay.
The orderliness. And you come here.
Yeah.
Sometimes the orderliness is not there.
Yeah.
And then you know these people because you work with them in your offices.
Yeah.
You see their table are tidy. This is tidy. I mean, I've seen some. I've worked with
Not-
some
not
people.
all of them.
Not all, but I've worked with some people.
Yeah.
Maybe the type of industry where I work, a lot of people seem to be working with ADHD. And then
Yeah.
like before you know, everyone is tidy. And,
Yeah.
and then you come, everyone is rowdy and they can't fit in sometimes.
So,
Yeah, but-
all right.
so
So,
just-
yeah.
20 seconds.
Yeah.
I don't think any of that has to do with culture. I think that has to do with people. People. See, if I look at my wife right now, my wife is a very orderly person. She is neat. But if you have a majority of people within the church that are not neat, that's what the church is. The church is an amalgamation of the people within it. So I don't think that has to do with necessarily like the difficulties of bringing migrants. I think, you see, it's not every Australian church you'll find that. You find Australian churches that are neat, you find ones that are not neat. You find Chinese churches that are neat, you find the ones that are disorganized. I don't think that, see, if I go to a church and I find that they're not organized, I can easily go to another church and go to,
But they've lost you.
well, see, I want. Okay, so this is this.
So
but this is the thing.
part of
Is
the
it-
problem.
Are they
part of-
losing?
part of also
Are
the
they
problem
being
is
lost?
Sometimes,
Are they lost?
sometimes-
They lost you.
No, they might see. I see. This is the problem with the church body as a whole, not just one church, all churches. We have to stop going to the idea that if they leave our church to go to another church, that is a loss. No, as long as they're still receiving the gospel at another church, that is fine. But yes, if there's somebody who goes to a church and then we lose them and they don't go to church, that is a loss.
All right.
I
So
get-
so
you know what I mean when I say they lost.
let's move on a little bit.
Okay.
When we have missionaries, thank God, years ago, it was the Europeans that were sending missionaries to Africa.
Yes.
Now
we're the ones
we are
sending
sending. So when we get people coming from Africa, to other countries, I've heard of a lot of success stories with Nigerian missionaries going from Nigeria to maybe like Papua New Guinea, Solomon Island, and I'm hearing that their population there is like 80% Papua New Guinea, 80-90%. So what are they doing right that we are struggling with? Okay, like how are they able to really penetrate? These are like same denomination of churches, that are able to go. So is it that the people that are going to those type of places, is it that the culture is similar, being developing country, or is it that the pastors that are going there or the missionaries that are going there, their mindset is different from the ones that are coming here?
I wanted to stay within natural things and not talk anything supernatural because we're talking to everybody.
Yeah.
Sometimes supernaturally. I mean, pastors or any leader, to institute a church, you have to be Holy Spirit led, and that comes with it also.
Yeah,
but I don't want to talk about that because the data is ups and down. Well, but it's a point. That's a point there. The other one is if you look at those, like you did mention, I think if you go to all those countries, there's related factors that you can easily fit into those type of environments. I mean, living in Lagos, Nigeria, or living in Ogun State in Nigeria, and then flying from there to come to Sydney, Australia. It's big gap. It's big gap. There are not many things that are relatable, right? So when you come here, the gospel you preach must be different. It's
Wait, the gospel you preach must be different,
Hold on.
or
the gospel. Okay, I have to frame it properly.
Yeah.
The gospel, the type of gospel you preach must be
hold on.
wholesome. Must be an all-encompassing one
Are we saying
that appeals to the people you are now meeting. That's what I mean.
All right, Laide.
Okay.
There's one other part I want to mention is you listen to most of those stories that where you are hearing success story, you understand that the pastors or the preachers that go there, they meet the need of the community.
And I also think another point is maybe one or two family goes.
Yeah.
And there's not already an established Nigerian community there.
There.
So They have no choice.
Exactly.
Just like the missionary that came to Africa to start off with.
They have no
Trust
choice
me,
but
if there were also a lot of their people,
Black
Caucasian,
will
Western
be
people,
doing
their
Caucasian,
church it will just be for them. But because they go, so maybe that's another issue. That's another problem that we think that do we need to. It's hard because we already have a growing migrant. So likes attract likes, isn't it?
Yes.
And sometimes some of the things we dealt with, like you come in, driver license. How do you get a driver license? How do you get work? So when someone from Africa comes,
you are able to service their needs.
Yes.
That's that's exactly what I'm talking about.
More of the likes.
Yeah.
So
for you to reach what I have noticed, even when Jesus was preaching to people, I noticed this in the Bible. He meets needs first, then introduces you to the kingdom. Needs kingdom. Needs kingdom. So it just doesn't come with kingdom first.
So do we need to start meeting more of the needs of the people?
Yes, if a church is in
let's get your view.
Yeah, I think it's a bit more nuanced than that, because think about it. You go to countries like Papua New Guinea. There are only Papua New Guineans there. There is that you don't find Australians, Americans, UK, Chinese, South Americans. It's only Papua New Guinea. The people who are going to come to your church, if your church has to succeed at all, it's Papua New Guinea, and that's it.
So and those pastors there, they go extra mile.
Yes, in fact,
to fit in.
Yes,
I've heard stories of them even eating things that they were like lizard. They just
even the attire that they wear, it matches the culture. But see, I think there's a different mandate for those type of pastors compared to those ones that say if you are coming from another nation and you're building a church here based on what was in your previous country, it's a different mandate. You come here and you say that these are our doctrines. If you want to come, you come. If you don't, you don't. You can't go to Papua New Guinea and do that. You have to reach Papua New Guineans as they are. But then the question is, okay, maybe we come here and then you set up your church, because this is a global church maybe. And so you set up your church here and then you say that, no, even though the parish has said that, the head parish has said that this is how we have to, you said, no, we are going to just meet Australians as they are. I can assure you that you will not be part of that parish anymore. They will say, no, you can't start out the name of that church under that. You have to go and do it our way. But if you're going to Papua New Guinea, you're not going to bring Papua New Guinea. So it's different mandates. That one to Papua New Guinea, it's more like a mission.
As we start to,
So the mandate is also...
This also should be mission, just to...
the mandate is also an issue there.
Sorry, I know that we're trying to wrap. But if we do that, what we find out is that we actually... It's both a success, and I won't say it's a success and failure, because success is that you might actually find out that a lot of more Australians or more diverse group of people come to your church. But the problem is that they might already be churches that are better equipped to service those needs than you that is trying to meet their need. Come into this country.
No, but we know that there's a gap there because a lot of them are still not going to churches.
No,
so it's not that you are competing with them.
They're not competing.
But
those other churches.
You're right. Yeah. There are still churches there are people who are still looking for churches, or they're coming to Christianity new. But if you have to compare somebody who has lived in this country for a long time, as native to this country, compared to somebody who has come from another country here, and they're both trying to service the same need, they'll pick that native, even the day they want to become a Christian.
So that's where the challenge lies.
Exactly.
How can we be able to fit in that gap?
And that's why I'm getting to my solution. That I'm
okay. Before you get to your solution,
I'm about
we are wrapping up, this episode now, and we've talked about several things. We've talked about migrant churches, in diaspora. Yes, there's nothing wrong if they decide to focus on their particular culture, but the ones that are saying we are for all, we want to fulfill the Great Commission, the Great Mandate. How can we overcome these barriers? What are some of the solutions that our migrant church? That's why I cut you off, because I know you are getting to solutions. Our migrant churches, they want to reach out these people. We want to grow. Okay, we want to share the gospel of Christ. We want people to, more people to be saved. We've talked about a lot of barriers. What are the solutions? AY, and then we'll go to like this.
I think we need to move into the community and know what the needs of the communities are and meet them.
Okay.
And then introduce the kingdom to them after meeting those needs.
Okay.
And
Olaide.
I don't think I have a hardcore solution at the moment because I'm.
But you created a lot of problems here.
Don't mind it.
solution.
I'm an instigator. I'm an instigator. I don't doubt that.
Yeah.
But see, you're asking me to give you a solution, but I don't actually
Or
think.
steps towards a solution.
Yeah, but I still am not sure it's actually a big problem.
Okay.
See, you're right. There is a
Yeah, you
lot
didn't
that-
agree to it.
I didn't technically say that this is a big problem. I do think that there are steps that the church needs to take to move, not only for people in the community, but even for those that are younger, born in this current nation and not coming from Nigeria like some of us are, or coming from any African nations. Yes, you're right. We need to adapt. But I'm still of the belief that churches have almost like characteristics and profiles to them. If you're looking, just like denominations, if you're looking for a specific way, you will go and find that way. You will not just, see, you may, I don't want to use exaggeration, but you may even be Jesus Christ himself and tell somebody I'm at this church, but they'll say, no. I want to go to that church because I enjoyed this in that church. I enjoyed the men's program there. I enjoy the food that they give us after service. See, we're still receiving the gospel, but there are certain things that we cling to, you know. At the end of the day, for me, as long as we're receiving the gospel wherever we go, that's fine. As for the churches that want to bring more people in, like I said,
Which is majority.
which is majority. If you want to bring more people in, I think you have to ask yourself, are we seeking to bring more people that like our profile and we have to improve our profile? Or are we saying that we want to bring everybody that we can? If you want to do that, you have to be ready to ask yourself that, are we ready to lose members that are clinging on, not incorrectly, but are clinging on to certain profile and characteristics of our
So
church?
let me come in there, because for me, what I've always thought of, I've thought of this, and if you have a particular denomination in a city, we are here in Brisbane, I personally feel like, because as much as we might not want to believe it, there's a lot of people in our churches that like it perfect, or they even want more of Nigerian ways of doing things.
Yes, absolutely.
Because, they have spent most of their years in Nigeria, so they want to come and they want to wear their Ashwebi.
A feel of
Where else would you wear your Ashwebi to if you don't have, something like that? So for me, I feel like, a particular, denomination should have one, Nigerian church kind of vibe in a city. And the rest of the churches that is still within that denomination should be focused on Australian way of doing things. So that, for example, if you have people that say, look, I still want to hold on to my Nigerian culture, I want us to use microphone loud, I want to dance, I want the drum, everything, all of those things, there's a place for them to go to in that city. But any other missionary activities going on, any other churches that is being open, should now focus on the Australian culture. Like you said, look for their needs and all of that. For me, I think that might be the step towards a
It's
solution.
not a bad step,
move
but I
forward.
don't think. But you've changed the answer. You've answered
A
the
different question.
Because the point is that church itself. See, you can have because when you say that, it's no different than saying two separate churches. This church does this church that. It's two separate churches. What I'm saying is that this church that clings to this certain way.
But you are the one that said that you can't be everything to everybody.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That you can't find a solution to this. That's what I'm saying. Look, what I'm
It's
trying
tricky,
to say,
it's tricky.
it's no doubt tricky. What I'm saying is that you will never get to a point where you can bring everybody from every church. But what I say is that do the maximum you can do to bring as many without compromising on the profile of that church itself. And you just have to say that, look, there might be some people that come to this church, they will be like, this thing doesn't suit them, and we'll have to just direct them to another church. But the people that we can bring, let's make sure we can do the maximum best. If it means that, okay, we like music, but we can turn it down a bit, let's do that. But if they're saying that, I
But
only
what
like
about people
slow
that are
music.
people that are already within the church that
Guys.
like loud music?
No, but see, I don't think they will go away if we see. They will only go away if we're making drastic changes.
No, they want to move more towards the culture. They are not even thinking of moving in more moderate. That's the issue, yeah.
But, and see, that's why I think that it's hard that there may not be a solution to this. Well, no, let me say.
What is Hillsong doing that the
No,
others
but
are not
Hillsong-
able to do?
No, but Hillsong is different. Hillsong too, they have their own profile.
Of course.
See, I've heard from some people, and look, these are just opinions. This is just opinions from certain people. Some people will say like Hillsong, maybe they don't pray enough. They don't have committed prayer sessions, or they don't have Holy Ghost services.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, there are people
some
that
people
say that.
are like-
but is that true?
Eh?
Is that true?
These are opinions I've heard from people. But see, that's what's going to
Yeah,
differentiate
yeah,
people.
okay.
Some people will be like, no.
This is
I
what I
have to
want.
go and have my vigil.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
need to
yeah.
pray into this new month.
Yeah.
You know, the same way that we all pray for each other into a new month.
Yeah.
Some churches, you know, they don't do that.
Ah.
And there's not, I won't say there's nothing wrong with
Fireworks
it,
in the
but
city.
yeah.
Okay. Oh, all right. So I think.
So
Look, this is our purpose of this.
How many times have I hit this?
So I mean, I think you know, what we are talking about now is very deep. So yeah. So you know, your last words, you know, regarding this episode, you know, why do migrant churches struggle to reach Western audience? We've talked about the barriers. We've talked about some of the solutions. What is your, you know, last few words in 15 seconds regarding what we have discussed here?
I think Western churches are not reaching the larger audience as they may want because of the ways we're doing things presently, and we're not adapting. My preferred solution is that we adapt, we meet their needs, and then introduce kingdom to them.
For me personally, I think this is, you know, we have not really, even really scratched the surface of this topic, but I think we need to go back to, you know, the message, the gospel of Christ. I think the gospel of Christ, the way it is, you know, and the way it has been passed to us is effective enough, you know, and if we are struggling, you know, to meet and to, you know, fulfill the Great Commission, you know, let's think of the disciples, the amount of struggle that they will have to go through in order for them to mix and go into cultures is because they owed fully to the gospel. They found out what the true gospel of Christ is. And I think the more we hold on to that, the more we'll be able to, you know, penetrate and be able to reach a larger audience. So we need to go back, you know, and really look, you know, see what the gospel is about. And yes, there's a lot of, you know, understanding of the culture too, because it's one thing for you to carry a message, it's another thing for you to know how the message would be passed along to be effective. So I think it's a problem. You know, you can't have a church in Australia, you know, that wants to fulfill the Great Commission, and is attending to only 2-3% of the population. I think if Jesus was here on earth, he would try as much as possible not to lose the 2%, but we'll be doing a lot more to reach out to the 98%. So that's why, you know, this is an important topic, and, you know, I think we need to, you know, challenge ourselves and see the way moving forward. Yeah,
look, just in 20 seconds, I don't disagree with what my brothers have just said. My view still is that people are always going to be different. You can reach out to two different people, different characteristics, and you'll find out that you can either accept one or you can accept the other, but you can't accept both at the same time because they are diametrically opposed in how. See, as long as the message is being received by all, that is fine. See, and this is why I say that it's two-pronged. One, the churches need to do better. We need to be different. You can reach out to two different people, different characteristics, and you'll find out that you can either accept one or you can accept the other, but you can't accept both at the same time because they are diametrically opposed in how. See, as long as the message is being received by all, that is fine. See, and this is why I say that it's two-pronged. One, the churches need to do better. We need to find out a way that we can assimilate ourselves better into culture so that people can be more receptive. But two, we have to also recognize the cognitive biases or the mental biases within people. People are clinging to the environments they understand. And if you don't meet that environment, they will always go to a new church. No matter what you do, as you can be you can be Jesus Christ himself. And if you're not dispelling the message of God in the way that they like to receive it, then you might find that they go to a new church. And then there's nothing you can do about that.
Yeah,
so that's
which also should be fine. All right, thank you so much for listening to us. We hope to, you know, keep giving you more exciting discussions and topics like this. And if there's a particular thing you want us to talk about, please feel free to reach out to our emails or even on the comment section. We are keen to actually, you know, touch more on things like this. and yeah, and have that courageous conversation. Thank you very much.